Hello and welcome to another Phantasy Star Online 2 class review. This time we'll be going over the Magic Hammer user. No, not MC Hammer. Please stop making those damn puns. Techer. Techer. Apparently some people think it's Tekka, but English to Japanese, yada yada. Today I'm bringing forth one of our older specialists, and I don't mean by age, I mean by pretty much involved since the beginning. You know him, you love him. He's the man from the UK and that cool accent. Yes, folks, I went and got back Phoenix, the Techer Master, or some would say Grandmaster.
I'm not really a grandmaster, I'm just a competent tagger.
You can solo in-game crap. That constitutes Grandmastery in my book.
I see.
I don't know what I fall under. I can solo like 90% of the stuff in game at in-game levels, but I don't consider myself a master. All right, so a brief history, much like Braver, there isn't any because this is the first time the class has existed. But I will at least explain what makes it different and more unique than Force, which is considered the traditional mage of the Phantasy Star Online sagas and franchises. The Techer, unlike the traditional magician glass cannon, actually has physical defense and physical attack might / power. Obviously, these stats are not going to be extremely high because, you know, balance and those kinds of things. But the main difference, even though this class can use almost all the same weapons as the Force, is the almighty hammer, but the game likes to call it a wand, but not even a third of the weapons look like wands. They almost always look like hammers to me. I don't know about you, Phoenix, but I see hammers.
I see wands and swords.
That's true. Also, Lavis cannon. Why is it called a cannon when it's obviously a sword, and why is it considered a wand? That is just all kinds of wrong. But I digress. Yes, the class is capable of utilizing all the magics within the game. Initially, this class was one of the first outside of Force to use magic because, like I mentioned earlier many times, all the classes you see in any MMO were not always there in the beginning. Of course, the current meta dictates that by nature, this class is very powerful in and of itself. There's obviously a lot of damage you can do at higher levels when you get just the right mix of class and subclass, like peanut butter and jelly coming together for the first time. But I digress because that's all that really needs to be said. You already know you can use the rod weapon. You can still hit people with it, but the wand is the one that's meant to do the magic damage and do most of the hitting. In fact, your skill tree, which we'll get into later, I promise, also has various techniques that help with elemental damage and also attack amplification specifically for the wand, as the Force does with the rod. Now, as far as the third weapon, don't think about it too hard. Whenever you're curious about a third weapon on an advanced class of any type in this game, I promise you it's a gunblade. Everybody can use the gunblade. So yeah, we're not really going to talk about the gunblade unless, I don't know, Phoenix, you can find something interesting about it with a Techer.
I have found no uses yet for a damaging purposes of a gun stash yet.
Can't say I blame you. All right, well, since you're the master, I'm gonna go and let you go ahead and knock out number 2, which is the weapons / the pros and cons of each weapon for the class, which is basically the rod and the wand. And obviously, since it's gonna take the longest, why don't you start off with telling people about the wand, how it works, and the good and bad.
Alright, so the wand is a melee and tech hybrid weapon. It focuses heavily on normal attacks as you pull the enemies together, and with that, magnifies how much wand explosions you can pull off in a single hit.
You gotta tell them what wand explosion is.
A wand explosion is this small area of effect that emits from each enemy you hit. The more enemies you hit in a single hit, the more damage you can deal. Aside from wand explosion and normal attacks, it is also capable of doing good damage with techniques, using grants,
okay,
and the other techniques.
For you people who are completely new, for some reason Sega decided that technique and magic are somehow interchangeable. So if you hear him or me use the word technique, what we're really meaning is magical attack or magical ability. What type of dash or evasive maneuver does the wand utilize?
It's normally Mirage Escape, but with one levers that you're going to be activating most of at the start of the quest anyway, it is a use step. Normally, the Tekka class skill trees doesn't have anything to enhance their step and vulnerabilities, but other subclass can support the extra invasion windows for the step.
Gotcha. Well, we already knew this, but iframes, invincibility frames on magic evasion has always been damn near flawless, for lack of a better English term. All right, so I'm curious what your opinion is on the rod on Tekka. Obviously, much like the gunner, the class is geared to paying more attention to the wand, but what's your feelings on the wands as far as how it functions with the Tekka?
Wand is a pretty good weapon.
Rod.
Use melee attacks at close range, but if you're needing to attack at long range, then you have techniques as well. There's also got a photon art, which you can use heavy hammer, which is quite the utility. You can use that for uncharged for the super armor that you can get given to, which you can use to ignore the enemy's attacks.
If memory serves, heavy hammer has a homing effect too, right?
It homes in on the enemy, yes.
Nice.
Or you can charge it up to deal massive damage, but normal attacks are still the go-to attacks for when the enemy is downed.
Okay, now what about the rod on the Tekka?
I thought Tekkas can't use rods.
Oh yeah, that's right. They can use some rods, but it's few and far between. Anyways, all right. Well, I guess I'll go over the cons of the Tekka, or at least the wand first. Little Mister, I want to be a hammer. All right. So when it comes to the wand, yeah, your attack animations are slow. Obviously, they're not as slow as the hunter class used to be, but they're still in this unusual middle area because they're nowhere near as fast as more traditional weapons on almost any other class. And I'm including even long range ones. However, do keep this in mind, the game inherently is not even meant to have you using photon arts for direct physical damage. Although we mentioned earlier the heavy hammer is a physical attack for the wand, it's the only one. Also, I find it a little bit ironic that shit's called heavy hammer, but the weapon's called a wand. And in fact, if memory serves, heavy hammer as a photon art, that didn't actually show up until about 8 months or so ago, right?
It showed up in around episode 5.
So yeah, not that long ago, like at a bare minimum just last year. Okay, so other than that, the slow speed, you also have to keep in mind that you will have no other true physical attacks or special moves with that thing other than the heavy hammer itself. Also, if you want to switch the natural damage output from your skill tree special actions on the skill tree, please do remember, and I can't say this enough, please do remember your physical attack, if you choose to go down that route, needs to be very good. Or you need to have a sub that has extremely good physical attack, because the natural build, or rather the natural attack power of the combination of the class and the race of your character aren't going to be that far apart. Even if you're considered the strongest glass cannon class in the game, known as a Dooman, but I like to call them Demon because a Dooman just sounds dumb to me. I'm sorry, it really does. I do like the race though, or species, however you want to look at it, but the name that they gave them is just terrible to me. Now, as I mentioned earlier, besides wand and magic, or magic through the wand, on many occasions, even before the great 14-star universal weapons that can work with any class era of the game, which just happened last month, if I remember correctly, I don't think blood weapons I believe showed up 2 months ago, maybe 3. But anyways, the rod has long been considered to be the backup weapon for the Tekka, just because Sega inherently made it easier to find weapons for the rod that can naturally be used by both the Force and the Tekka simultaneously. Now, the biggest con to this is almost identical to the wand. The only difference is, even though you have slow physical attack animations, but let's be honest, this isn't supposed to be hitting physical anyway, You have no full tarn arts that do physical damage or can be set on your hotkeys. You basically are just limited to using it to project magic through. But to be fair, you should be used to this kind of thing. If you come in this game looking for a magic class, you already know that 9 times out of 10, magic user McGee usually has a staff or rod that barely does true or any decent physical damage. So I'm not going to sit here and belabor a point. The same faults for the hammer are pretty much the same faults for the rod. Phoenix, did you want to add anything?
Well, this one is kind of, I believe, to be still better than using rod because
I agree.
you have much more ability to step out of danger after you cast each tag. And also, you gotta count that you have a main class weapon bonus, which only applies if you're using a weapon that you can normally equip. You get it's the bonus from the titles and one of the class skills, I believe, and it only comes into play if you have a main weapon that is you can normally equip. But because techers can't normally use rods, they can't get that bonus.
I'm inclined to agree. Oh yeah, and last but not least, but also literally least, is the Talisman, which occasionally gets abbreviated to Talis, because if memory serves, the text box won't allow for the full name or something. I'm not really sure, but it's a Talisman. The Talisman is meant to be the long-range weapon for the Tekker. It doesn't actually do anything different other than give you reduced magic, but also allow you to cast it at the last spot it went to. It can do some physical damage, but its primary use is to be thrown near an enemy and let off a magic spell at that distance. So basically allowing you to be like a force and avoid danger by doing long-range casting and also making it somewhat safe. That's pretty much the only benefits to it. Now the cons, there are a few, but they're very devastating. The skill tree does not even want to acknowledge its existence. Now that may sound hyperbolic, but if you actually sit down and look at the skill tree for Tekker, there's almost nothing mentioned of Talisman. And as far as things that directly boost it, that's very few and far between too. The only thing that directly supports and boosts the Talisman's effects in any way, shape, or form, to my knowledge, on the tree is T attack boost, which boosts up your natural technique attack when you're in the Tekker as a main or a sub in general. So, yeah, you don't want to prioritize this weapon unless you're a hero. Heroes can also use a Talisman, but obviously in a different manner, for those of you wondering why I said that. Now, normally I would like to ask you, Phoenix, your opinions on it, but you literally have refused to use it since you became a Tekker, I believe, after the first week. So I know you don't use it and have nothing to say about it. Moving on. Hey, all right, going to the next one, and I'm going to go and Google and pull up the Tekker skill tree when it's time to talk about that, so I can directly tell people what I'm thinking of instead of just guessing at the names of the stuff.
Right, so the advantages with this class that you can bestow your party members with shift to redeem the D-band, which are enhanced by the class skills that you've spent points in. Not only boosting the attack and critical hit rate, but also boosting the survivability.
Nice.
You also can get, aside from buffing your allies, you also have enhanced range to all your support techniques.
Like that is right.
And Song Deal.
Yeah, you can your range is different if you go down certain parts of the tree. But I'm curious because I haven't seen anything, and I was looking at this earlier. Those field spells, the range on them. Does anything in the game actually tell you the exact range you get or range increase you get when you level them things up? Because I don't think I've ever found anything. I guess that's a no.
I'll bring up a webpage that I know.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I never actually. Oh yeah, I sent you a skill tree link in your inbox, but yeah, I was curious because if of the many things that Sega should include in this game that they don't naturally tell you even in tutorials, and I've seen the old and the new ones. I've found nothing that tells you the extension range when you level up the casting radius for like almost all of your moves. Cause I can't tell you, and this not as a Tekker, but just as a player, I cannot tell you how infuriating it is when you do a healing spell or you do a spell that's going to fix everybody's physical stat decrease or condition, and you're like a third of an inch away from being able to heal or restore people with it, for the simple fact that there's nothing in the game to let you know your max range. God, it's depressing at this point.
I found that wide support increases the range of support techniques by 20%.
Yeah, but what's the starting radius?
I have no idea. I would have to research further into the techniques. But I know that Territory Burst increases the range about a further 50% for all the other for all the support, while wide support increases the shifter D band rest and anti.
Yeah, like that actually, I don't know. Like sometimes I think Sega's too busy making outfits to remember that, oh yeah, we still need to do blah 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 thing in PSO2, but at the same time, I know Sega understands that they found possibly their newest gold mine of all things to mine. So even though I know that they get player feedback constantly and they willfully ask for it, I think that sometimes the smaller things they completely skip over, or either they prioritize them based on how much money they think they're going to get. And I know that sounds very negative, but remember, that's how I feel about the situation. I'm not saying Sega does this for a fact. If anything, I really sincerely hope they don't. But somebody needs to overhaul the explanation system. They make small strides here and there in the past 3 years, and I'm not going to say that they didn't, but the biggest issues are sometimes still left unchallenged. It's crazy. Anyways, all right, so what do you think some of the cons are to the Tekker class?
Possibly do weak damage compared to the other classes. Possibly due to the lack of photon orbs and the greater multipliers that the other classes has.
I mean, you pretty much summed it up very, very simply and plain. Yeah, I totally agree. The only thing I would change or add is they know that they encourage the class that it has physical attack damage and physical attack damage and physical attack defense. So at a bare minimum, at least maybe have the wand be able to get elemental based photon arts, you know? Like instead of just heavy hammer, or here's heavy hammer with a fire element infusion, or here's a whole nother slew of photon arts, and depending on which ones you do, different element types will come out. To be fair, when I first heard of Tekker, I thought that's what it was going to do.
I was more thinking of a complex photon art that changes based on the active element of the wand.
That would be stupid good. We'll have to explain what that is later. But the reason I had an issue with that was just based on the fact that that would take time. It would be something that's meant to be not a last resort, but a fight ender. Whereas the photon arts are meant to be fight enders and also just to keep you competitive with the enemies you're going to fight against. Just so we don't lose the noob guys. What we meant when we said about compound techniques, there are certain magic attacks in the game which, well, they're primarily meant for the force to be able to pull off, but there are primary magic attacks in the game that are a combination of more than one element. And most of these, except for the more recent ones, require you to build them up with a meter and then unleash them all at once. They were not repeatable, the original ones at least, and they were very, very powerful. There was one for darkness and fire, lightning and wind, ice and light, for example. And when you did these moves, their damage equivalency was comparable to sometimes mini boss levels of HP. There are plenty of videos online or just natural gameplay where even if you fight a mini boss at your level, some people hit that mini boss with it one time and the fight's over in probably less than 20 seconds. If you ever wanted a way to say fuck you with magic, compound magic, you will not regret using them because their job is to basically save you or destroy mobs. Some of them are individual based, but they're all good. Some better than others, but that's a story for another time. But yeah, man, I would love to see some more of those, or at least ones where the Techer and the Force can both use them, like the new hybrid ones they get. All right, now as far as class cons for me, I pretty much agree, like I said. And the only other thing I would add is that I feel like the game shouldn't make you choose between physical attack damage and switching with your technique attack damage, because in this game, your attack damage is divided in 3 states. There's physical or striking, long range or just range, and then technique, which is all magic. And obviously, since the Techer is what it is, it basically has to jump between the 2 worlds of magic and striking. But obviously, if you would look at the skill tree, which again we're going to get into next, you would know that that skill tree is catering to magic, and physical damage is an afterthought, even though that's the major selling point of the class, or at least the primary selling point. Because when you introduce a magic class, the first thing people are going to ask in this game is, what's making it different from Force? Why should I not use a Force over this class? Moving along. Let me load up the skill tree, because yes, like I promised, we're going to talk about the skill tree. Obviously, I'm not very proficient in this skill tree, but like I've mentioned multiple times, I have dozens of skill tree resets, so sometimes I can sample very, very good things quite frequently and test them out before I go back and redo everything on almost all the skill trees, especially Techer, because I'm not going to lie, Techer is a, no pun intended, technical class. The margin for trial and error happening or kicking in, very, very high, even if you're played some previous Phantasy Star games, because it's so wildly unique as far as magician classes go. But yeah, let me grab that skill tree real quick. I sent you a link too, Phoenix. It's in your inbox. Okay. Obviously, we're going to differ on how to build something out, but more than likely, it'll more be like, I'm doing something wrong and you correct me. But the way I look at the Techer skill tree, and again, this is speaking only on my skill tree, one of the primary things I try to do is figure out what element I want to try to master or go for in advance. So much like the Braver, there's a couple ways you can inherently build this class. The Force has 3 elements that you can prioritize or choose which one you prioritize in its skill tree. We'll talk about the Force one day, I promise. And in the Techer, it's got another set of 3. It has wind, light, and darkness mastery. So one of the first things you can do to save yourself a giant headache in the future once you start leveling this class, or at least taking it seriously, is looking at the skill tree and deciding in the beginning, do you want to focus more on wind magic, which almost no one does, so it's considered very low tier when it comes to skill tree building for Techer. Light magic, pretty much almost on equal tier with dark mastery, but since we're in episode 6 or season 6 of the game, we're having a slew of new darkness type enemies, so its value may decrease, but only by a little. And of course, dark mastery. Now, there are special effects associated with all of these elements in particular. And yes, Techer does allow you to boost your odds of creating those effects manifesting. Light does confusion, wind does mirage. Still don't know what mirage really does. Maybe you can clarify, Phoenix. And darkness does poison. But yeah, Phoenix, do you know what the mirage status effect even does?
Mirage gets a chance for the person who's suffering the ailment a chance for attacks to miss.
Oh, okay. So it's basically an illusion style. Okay. All right. Okay. So the normal way I approach a skill tree, and again, please remember and take in mind, I am not the Techer master. I think my Techer is barely at 70. I do plan on leveling it more because I think it could be a great sub, especially for the new upcoming class, but it's hard to tell. It looks magical and whimsical, but it may just be more of a long range attacking damage class. It's Etoile is a mystery right now, so I'm not even going to pretend that I can give you some good advice or guides on it or anything like that. But as far as the skill tree is concerned when it comes to Techer, I can tell you right now that Mirage Escape is going to be one of your life-saving techniques. No pun intended. Again, sorry guys. Technique is everywhere in this damn class's name and everything around it. Mainly because, as I've mentioned numerous times, the Force or magical users have literally one of, if not the best, evasion dodges in the game. You basically go translucent, turn into some glitter like Michael Jackson was chopping off pieces of his glitter glove. If memory serves, that you are pretty much out of harm's way close to 4 to 4.5 full real world seconds. You cannot attack during this state, obviously. You cannot jump and you cannot cast magic. You cannot use items. But you're gonna live through it. So be thankful, because this thing is immune even to field attacks. Now, field attacks are a very rare occurrence, but basically it's when a boss in game has the ability to hurt anything that is on the screen in the stage, period. As long as it's in the vicinity, you getting touched. This thing can dodge it. Be proud of yourselves. Y'all some sneaky bastards. Now, as far as just reversal, it goes without saying, you don't want to stay on the ground long, so the quicker you can recover, the better. And Tech Charge Edition, which I don't know why you think it said addiction, is pretty simple. Charge techniques gain the effect of a just attack. So that means if you notice in the game, I've mentioned multiple times, you have a blue reticle and a red reticle. The blue reticle lets you know when your animation is started. Also, when you get to the end of it, it lets you know if you can do more damage with your next attack by using their just system, as in just attack or charge attacks primarily. You want to get that move, especially since it only costs 1, as soon as possible. I feel like it is mandatory, as well as air reversal. Yes, I know I'm covering all the safe stuff first, but that's kind of what I only can cover. I'm going to leave the rest of Phoenix soon. Air reversal is pretty much the same as your ground recovery, just known as just reversal. Because, well, for the longest time, there were situations where the enemies can stunlock you or automatically introduce a high level of knockback that has your character unable to get out of the technique or recover until you fully hit the ground. So even if it's a glitch or unintentional, you get into situations where a boss or a really big enemy knocks you almost halfway across the screen. Your character is not going to do anything until they hit the ground. But here's the thing, you can still collect damage while you're in the air. So other enemies can shit you with long range stuff or come at you while you're in the air still and almost like create a pop-up situation. It sucked. It really, really did. Especially in serious fights where there was a death limit in the game. Yes, some emergency situations have a death limit. Emergency quests or serious missions have a death limit or a death cap. And it sucked because that meant that you couldn't heal up there. You couldn't use magic up there. You just had to take it all. Even though, actually no, there's no even though. There's no upside to that. It just sucked. Always get air reversal. All right, now, Phoenix, you want to talk more about everything else on the tree or how yours is built?
Okay, I've got the skill tree. So I usually take every support skill, except Resto Advance, since here Resto is quite potent already.
Resta is the healing skill of the game for magic, in case you guys are wondering.
I haven't gone for the Versa fields, and I usually opt for Moon Atomizers. Tech Charge Attack Edition, I can get that in the Phantom skill tree instead.
What does Tech Charge do again?
It basically gives charge techniques a property of just attack in case you miss the timing. However, for uncharged techniques like Nabata, they won't benefit from it. I taken all the light and dark mastery since they are my to-go element for offensive tech.
Nice.
I like to use Gig Grants for light and Non-Megid uncharged, Ram Megid and Megid.
Okay, yeah, I'm curious, because I know on the darkness tree, on the skill tree, there's a technique called ignition boost, not ignition boost, poison ignition, yeah. Okay, so my understanding of that skill is that when you create the poison effect on the enemy with darkness spells, that thing creates a secondary explosion, or it increases the odds of poisoning the people around that person that got infected. How does that work?
If the enemy's poisoned, you can activate that skill to explode it, and it gives a chance to spread the poison to other enemies. It's potent, I can tell you that, but on mobs they usually die quite fast. And another thing that bosses with special interaction to poison won't be affected by this skill.
Interesting. All right, so
So
for the buff spells like Shifter, which does attack, and D-Band, which handles defense, what do you recommend people invest in more in the case of all the Shifter and D-Band stuff?
take everything related to Shifter and D-Band.
Hey, you don't play.
People would appreciate more HP, a better damage reduction, as well as more attack power, and some classes do rely on critical hit rate, as well as phantoms.
Well, you heard the man, guys. Don't slack on your support, basically. I am curious, though. I think they call it Reurker, or maybe they call it Super Treatment or something, but the skill on the Tecker tree, which I need to go open that window back up, that literally revives people without using an item. Reverser Field. Okay, yeah. All right, so what do you... No, I was just going to say, like, do you think that it's worth heavily investing in it or just partially investing in that?
Partial invest, since it only lasts a maximum of 15 seconds with a cooldown of 10 or 5 minutes, depending on whether you have to rain grinded. With the level 1, if you go to a dead person, you can just cast Vesta and you can just bring their HP back up to 100%. You have moon atomizers for these, unless you really need to save on the moon atomizers for like long drawn out quests against bosses.
Yeah, I was curious because, see, one of the first things I did, like I think I had a calculator on me at the time, but this was a long time ago. So when they announced Reverser Field was basically Reurker, I think I'm saying it right. Reurker might have been the telepipe skill from PSO1, but when they introduced Reverser Field, my first thought was, wait, everybody has moon atomizers. And I thought, okay, so 4 people normally in a party, so that means 20 moon atomizers. So if everyone combined has 20 moon atomizers that they can utilize back to back to back to back to back, what would be the point of investing in Reverser Field? But then over time, they started adding more effects and more things on the skill tree that related to Reverser Field, like Reverser Ring bonus and stuff like that. So I was thinking, oh wait, maybe they realized that Moon Atomizer almost does a more equivalent job. Because like a magic person can charge Resta, wait for somebody to do Moon Atomizer, and boom, pop off healing them up before they even stand up and the character can move around again. But also at the same time, you know, moons do run out. I was always never sure, so I was scared to invest in it.
I don't really put any points in it.
Well, I mean, I can't say I blame you.
Sometimes, if you want to try and be efficient on moon atomizers, another problem that you need to actually get close to them in the first place, and sometimes people might beat you to it with a moon atomizer.
Gotcha.
Super treatment on the other hand, if you cure a status ailment from yourself or your allies, you get the benefit of a huge massive PP recovery, as well as the person you've removed status ailments from.
Okay. Now, the wand exclusive skills, well, we'll just start off with the more basic one. Do you believe, or which do you think is better to invest in, or do you say go for broke and go get both again when it comes to Wand Reactor and Wand Lover? Like, do you see one as more important than the other, or you just think you can't have one without the other?
Always get Wand gear, as well as Lovers, Reactor, and Element. Wand Lovers increases the striking power, as well as making you use stepping instead of Mirage Escape. Wand Reactor adds a strike attack based on the tech attack on the wand weaponries, and Wand Gear Element has a chance of given with the wand explosions inflicting status ailments dependent on the element.
Yeah, if I'm counting right, and I might not be. If you get all of the element status effect bonuses, boosters from this tree, I think you get close to 40 or a 50% boost if you get them all for creating a status effect, which that's actually pretty good. Now, we won't.
I'm not sure if the Mirage boost, Panic boost, or Poison boost will affect the chances of the 1 gear element.
Yeah, me neither. I was gonna ask you about that, but apparently a lot of people aren't sure. Well, other than that, I was just curious because we all know that there's another skill in here named Element Weak Hit. Just from the name alone, you should know that this seems like a priority, but let me just read it off. Increase your damage against your enemy's weak element. Why would you not want this?
It's even if you put 5 points in it, then it also increases the non-weakness elemental power, which is still good because sometimes Grunt is like the overall best option no matter which enemy you fight.
Yeah, it's like a legitimate, genuine, no-brainer type situation. But the one I'm curious about is PP Convert, because that looks a little bit like Fighter's Limit Break to me. Limit Break on Fighter, wait, don't remember, we never discussed Fighter yet, but Limit Break is a special skill on Fighter that dramatically increases your attack power. I can't remember by what percent. Cuts your maximum HP down about 60 or 70%. Imagine you're hitting your enemies, for example, I'm not saying this is genuine, 2 or 3 times harder than normal, but now your HP can't go past 200 and normal HP is 1,000. This is basically as close to as a force gets to a similar spell. PP Convert increases your photon point restoration rate at the expense of your maximum HP. So yeah, and when you get that maxed out, you lose about 70%, or is it saying that you lose 20% of your max HP level?
It says you only have 50% of your HP to work around with.
Gotcha.
If you have max level.
What's your opinion on that skill? Should they max it out or just partially invest or not touch it?
I haven't really put any points in it since I can fight for a long time when during ranged combat. I think people can, and it's a partial investment, like up to 3 points, but I usually spend points on other stuff instead.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree personally. I wouldn't go past maybe 2 just to see how it feels, but I would maybe go to 3 because just looking at the recovery amount, it doesn't stop switching between 1 second intervals for 1 HP until you get to level 3, where it goes into 2 second intervals, or I'm sorry, it goes into a +2 interval instead of a +1 photon point gain. But yeah, that's pretty much all the important stuff on the skill tree. Just a brief recap. Always get your shifter and deband. Always. Elemental Weak Hit is a no-brainer. You can pick and choose which element between wind, light, and dark you want to master first, but you should obviously, if possible, or you can afford the points, go into the dark tree opposite the light tree. Mirage boost, hey, if you want to do it, I guess that's fine, but you better be really loving the wind spells if you're going to invest in it. Also keep in mind that you will still more than likely, if you play the game well and even do the special skill point quest, you should be able to also slightly touch on, if not go down, the light tree, most of it, and also most of, if not at least a third of the dark tree. So don't ever feel like you're too over specialized when you play the Tekker. Wand gears are your friend, guys. They totally are. Anything else you want to add to the skill tree talk real quick? Okay. So as far as who should play this class, well, let's just get this out the way. If you love magic, you like taking out enemies with 2 charge shots, or hell, maybe even 1 without having to get in their face, you go right here. Because if you're a long range fighter, your options are basically magic and guns. However, if you are heavily leaning in that direction, I can tell you, you will probably fall in love with it, because the biggest weakness that has always existed pretty much since the Gary Gygax era, for those not sure, creator of Dungeons & Dragons, the Gary Gygax era of RPG gaming, the magic user dies quick. Tekker circumvents that fairly easily, and with very minimal investment. So make sure you pick the right class race if you plan on playing this class or prioritizing this class over almost anything else in the game. That being said, I will recommend this to beginners, but I want to add to this that the beginners that should be messing around with this should have Force as their main or their sub, because obviously those two complement each other to no end whatsoever. And you just have to ask yourself, which skill tree do you like better as far as their unchangeable primary skill tree things? I know it's rarely mentioned, but there are some things within the skill trees that only can be used when one class is this primary class and not the sub, aka backup class. So if you can use a force and you're good at it, even though it's a starter class, you go right ahead and you grab yourself a Techer or switch them around. If you can use a Techer good and you're comfortable with how it handles, especially up close, you go and make sure force is your sub. So I would recommend this to newbies, especially if you love that magic. What about you, Phoenix? Who would you recommend this to? Or what type of player would you recommend this to?
For those who have a passion in supporting your party members. Also, if you like to gather every mob in existence and just kill them immediately with a single swing.
There he is. There's the slaughterer of worlds and dragons. Why rise like a phoenix when you can burn like a phoenix? That's not his catchphrase, but he should use it as one.
No, thank you.
You were just no fun today. Okay, moving on. All right, so this one is probably almost completely going to be in your favor. We're going to talk about the skill ring opinions. Now, I'm going to say my little piece because my piece is very little. It's nugget sized, if you will. So as far as skill rings, I usually try to use ones that are universal for all classes because I want to level them up, stick them in my armor, so any inherent boost that they give, everyone can get simultaneously. Because depending on the day, or I don't know, if I blink or sneeze, I'll change what my main and subclasses are altogether. One of the curse about playing this game legitimately since beta is that some days, no matter how good you are, you never know what classes you want to play or how long you're going to play those classes combined together before you switch. So what I try to do is go for the critical boost for technique or critical boost striking. Now, I don't feel like I need to go into the detailed version of it again, but I've mentioned numerous times over the course of these videos because I never know which one you guys see first, so I have to mention it. Critical damage does not inherently work like critical damage does in any other game. So really what you want to do to guarantee you're hitting your maximum amount or getting close to the maximum amount of potential damage you can cause is increase your dexterity. However, the critical boost skill ring somewhat changes that. And I stress the term somewhat. The crit boost rings increase not only the frequency that you can create a critical attack, but the natural damage increased by said critical attack. There's one for every form of attack: striking, range, and technique. So if you have your armor and you want to fuse a ring into your armor, you could put all three rings into your armor, and they can also stack with the rings that you have, whatever ring, I believe it's a right hand ring, with whatever right hand ring you have on at the time. So if you know you're going to play a force and you already got a maxed out critical technique ring, put another one on. Now you're really not trying to kill mobs and still dusting them. Let me be the first to tell you, just based on what my own friends tell me, and also courtesy of Sega finally making their own damage calculator, which personally I like better than the damage parser. I never used it, but I know how the result screen works, and it doesn't tell me the information I'm looking to know half the time. But my damage, or rather my attack power. Oh, hold on. Sorry, my lawyer is calling me right now. Don't worry, I'll edit this out later. Where was I? Skill rings. Yes. Okay, so outside of that, I am aware of the Techer Valor, or the class Valor rings, I believe they're called. And I know, yeah, I know they have special abilities, and I know a lot of people love them. However, I don't know what they do, so I don't know if I should recommend them to you. When it comes to skill rings, my priority has always been involving with class-specific skill rings or range attack and striking attack based skill rings. So I am a fish out of water with the exception of the critical boost rings. But yeah, my friends have been telling me, and well before we literally looked at me on the damage calculator, I've never hit in the pay grade I look like I hit in. Now I know some people might get offended by that statement, but hear me out. I play with strong people. I play with funny people. I play with cool people and I play with bored people. I prefer to play with foreigners. But I've noticed that they tell me that they barely have to worry about me, even if I'm what they would consider underpowered or at the average amount and nowhere near the meta, the super high end meta, which that doesn't bother me because they know I have a life. They know I have a schedule. And plus, I've literally got two hats that I wear. I'm a director doing independent game development. And I also, I just finished my training yesterday, which holy shit, 9 hours straight, no food. So if things continue to go well, I'm looking at, even if the lawsuit fails, which it won't, it's a default trial I already run. Haha, bitch. I'm looking at having an average payout per month of over $3,000. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not. And I'm not trying to brag about it, but that's enough for me to stably live off of, which means that depending on the day, I have a long work hour. So the amount of time I can invest in a Phantasy Star is not the same as others. And they understand that for the most part, I'm an adult. But when they need me, hey, I'm around. Or when they need an extra hand, I'm there. But I think it might have been just due to critical boost, as well as my ability to game the system when it comes to skill rings and fusing them in and out, that makes me hit out of my pay range. Phoenix, you've seen it. The majority of this year, I only went up like 300 or 400 in my natural attack power. When this year started, my natural attack power, when everything was like, didn't really go past 3,600 or 3,500. Now my average is 3,009 to 4 on almost everything I have. And that's before you factor in your team room booster for attack, and mine is at 8% or 10% on top of, in-game shifted D-band and also the critical boost. So yeah, it's very easy for me to not hit out of my pay grade with little investment. Doesn't mean I'm the best motherfucker out there, and I will never tell you that. I am very humble and realistic. The people who get the time to invest in all this crazy stuff either already did it a long time ago and they just keep stacking their upgrades time after time after time after time, so they don't have to do a lot of farming or investing to get bigger stat boosters and increases, or they're people who have nothing but free time on their hand, aka kids in the summer. Not hating on you. In fact, I congratulate you. So the fact that I can keep up with both worlds, even on my level or as low as that level may be, hey, don't bother me. I'd rather be the guy in the middle than being the guy who's so far behind people can't mess with them. With that being said, okay, we're going to let the true magical skill ring master go ahead and let you guys know what you should and shouldn't be doing with your techer.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you now. I couldn't hear you earlier. Oh yeah, so as I was saying, and again, don't worry about any issues that show up. Remember, none of this is live recorded, so I'll edit all of it out. So yeah, why don't you let these fine people know what they should and shouldn't be doing with their skill rings, because obviously I can only do so little.
I like the alternate bond element change because it lets you switch to the element of the last offensive tech you've charged, but it also excludes support techniques. So Sunverse and Sundeal can be cast without a unwanted element change. I like to have Mag Excite, which when I give my Mag the ability to use techniques, since they're quite potent on its own. So my Mag can give so I could give my Mag some fighting capabilities. I have atomizer levers as well. It lets you not only use Moon Atomizer faster, but also gives you invincibility throughout the use. And the last one, I have Defense Tech, which is the combination of Tech Parry and Short Barrage, which sometimes I have to shift to Talis at times.
Now, which ones do you think are an automatic you must fuse into your armor? And I don't know if we've mentioned it before, but hey, this is a newbie thing, so I'm going to mention it again anyway. For some reason, rings that you put on your finger in game, yeah, you can put them inside of your armor units. So I don't know why that's a thing, but hey, I ain't complaining. But yeah, what skill rings do you think are an absolute must for a techer to infuse in their armor, and why?
Atomizer levers, because it synergizes well with the rebirth bonus of your...
You gotta tell them what it does, bro.
Skill ring.
You gotta tell them what the rings do, bro.
Atomizer atomizer level because of the faster usage of moon atomizers, so you can get the rebirth bonus.
Okay, so it speeds up how long it takes for you to go through the animation for reviving. All right. Were those the only two rings you recommended?
Either defense tech or tech parry ring, depending if you like to use short mirage or not.
Okay, so you want them to always keep those in your armor. All right. Well, I am curious though, because I'm pretty sure you've experimented with it too. But what do you think about that? The Valor Techer ring and the Critical Boost Tech ring. Like, what's your opinion on those?
I like having critical strike rings, either striking or tech, depending on the situation. Because my subclass is a Phantom, and it slightly amplifies the critical hit power. Plus, I have like 90% critical hit rate with the skills rings on.
Techer after my own heart. Now, what do the class rings do again? Because I know they exist, but I thought all they did was make your hand glow. Apparently they do more than that.
The effort rings gives a small power boost, a small critical hit rate, and a slight damage reduction. 1% power boost, 10% critical hit rate, and a 3% power damage reduction.
And is it a left ring or a right ring?
It is a right ring, and any class can use it.
See, that makes me think that the critical ring is better, you know? Because, like, what if I have, defense booster or, no, Party of Toughness. What if I have Party of Toughness infused in my armor? That blank slot needs to be filled. I feel like I'm better off using the crit ring personally than I am the effort rings, but, you know, I know all cases are different.
I usually prefer the critical strike rings.
Me too. All right. So, and I'm pretty sure you could make a billion essays about this, but what classes do you think, or what subclasses, I should say, do you recommend people use with their Techer for good synergy besides Phantom? Because we all know Phantom is like the alpha and omega at this point.
Aside from Phantom, you can start off with Hunter as a subclass due to the many of the skills that boost survivability if you're learning Techer. However, well, it gives good survivability and good melee damage. You're lacking in their technique damage.
Yeah, you're not really going to get a high boost, but hey, at least you got the natural attack and defense boost that comes with the Hunter. All right, well, as far as magic classes, what do you recommend for good synergy with Techer?
I think I can recommend Hunter for those who are starting out. Other subclass might be Summoner for single target.
You actually like Summoner? I mean, not as a sub, but I mean as a main class. Do you actually like Summoner? I'm curious.
Yes. So I can just let for more lazy playstyle.
Hey, at least you're honest. That's kind of why I like you. Well, you're pretty much almost my exact opposite in every possible way that a human can be, but we somehow work well together. I wouldn't touch Summoner if it meant the cure for dick cancer. So yeah, I'm gonna just leave that like that. So are there any other subclasses you recommend, or is it just those two?
I recommend mostly Hunter for those starting out.
Okay.
And if they're feeling confident enough, they could go for Phantom if they like to mix in techniques as part of their battle style.
You really had never call them magic moves, do you? All right, well, Techer Phantom goes without saying. If you guys aren't aware why it's one of the most popular subclasses now, I'm going to make it very simple. When high-end advanced classes came out, basically just hero, it could not blend with anything at all. You either were a hero or you weren't a hero. Phantom is different, and supposedly so is Etoile, but I don't think there was a hard confirmation. But if there is, I hope it's true, and I want to see it. Phantom can be a subclass And it's the same type of high-end advanced class as Hero. They can't work together, but every class except Hero can work with Phantom as far as when Phantom is a sub. Because of this, and the natural stat boost inherent in more advanced classes, the Phantom's natural output when you max out its level gives you more natural stat boost than pretty much every other class combination in the game. However, there are a few exceptions, and those few exceptions don't even have it beat by that much. Usually it means you've maxed out a certain type of stat boost in your skill tree, and the amount of difference will be less than a double-digit number, when stat boosts in this game can usually often get into the triple digits at the high-end level. Also, you can use magic. But what also makes people not readily want to abandon any other subclass being their sub is that 9 times out of 10, nothing in the Phantom tree blends well directly with any other class, with very, very few exceptions. And Phoenix, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. We haven't discussed it, but the Phantom skill tree is heavily reliant on self-investment. So it has a lot of boosters and augmenters for things the class itself can do, but those things can only be done when it's the main class. So there's your trade-off. And now you see why people don't just readily abandon their current sub for Phantom, but also people who don't have a lot of other classes built up can mess with Phantom and get some very good results. Personally, I'm on both sides of the spectrum. I thoroughly enjoy Phantom as a subclass. Here's a weird one for you. It allows you to use weapons that go to Phantom, but you won't be able to use the Phantom's photon arts, which I don't understand how that works. But you also won't be, if memory serves, won't be able to use the photon arts to the lesser class. So Phantom can use rifle, right? So can Gunner and so can Ranger. But when you have Phantom, you can't do any other photon arts with that gun if you have it, unless the gun itself has a built-in photon art. And when guns have a built-in special attack photon art, it's only one at a time. They never do more than one. So it'll look weird, which means that the whole purpose of Phantom is really just to boost up the natural stats of whatever the primary class is. So keep that in mind. All right. With that being said, is there any other last minute things you want to add or, tell the people about the joys of Techerism?
There needs to be more, the world needs more Techers.
He means server, but yeah, Techer is not a terrible class, but its popularity has dipped off, we'll say, over the past couple of years. Also, he's just a big Techer fan, so why wouldn't he say that? I'd be more offended if he didn't. All right, so at this point, I'm either going to end the video or I'm going to edit in other people who wanted to talk about this stuff. And Phoenix, thank you for coming. Would you like to tell the people what server and guild you're in?
I'm just in shit too.
What's your guild?
It's just a team with my brother and his friends. Nothing to me.
No, I'm saying what's the name of the guild?
Cheetah Score!
That is possibly the most animated I've ever heard you sound. All right, well, I'll be sure to make sure that his guild and his character / username is in the description. So if you guys want to talk to him about more Techer, or if you need to have someone convince you to join the Techer army, he's around. Also, because he is so multi-talented, besides being not of Western English-speaking descent, he was nice enough to provide us with a spreadsheet guide on his class and his play style. And for you new people, and hell, maybe even some of you veterans who just aren't at his level yet, feel free to look over it. Link is in the description. And hey, feel free to tell your friends about it. Or find him, see if you can make something better on it. He's very, very approachable, and he's a nice guy. And I honestly can say I got nothing bad to say about him. And his brother's cool too. All right, I will see you guys later.